The spotlight is back on Sabarimala Temple, but this time it's not just one shrine, it's about the soul of India's constitution. A powerful 9-judge constitution bench led by Chief Justice Surya Kant is set to examine one of the most complex questions of our time. Can religious practices override fundamental rights, or must equality prevail over tradition? This is not just a legal hearing, it's a reflection of India itself, a bench crafted with institutional inclusivity, cutting across gender, region and community, a conscious attempt to mirror the country's pluralism. At the heart of the debate, gender equality versus religious autonomy. From the landmark 2018 verdict declaring the ban on women of menstruating age entering Sabarimala as quote-unquote unconstitutional, to the 2019 referral to a larger bench, and now in 2026 the final defining battle. But the scope goes beyond Sabarimala. The bench will also hear the decades-old Dawoodi Bohra excommunication case, where excommunication has meant social boycott and denial of access to places of worship. It will examine the rights of Parsi community women, their identity, their faith, and whether marriage outside religion strips them of their religious rights. And it will address a critical question within Islam. Should Muslim women have equal access to mosques and dargahs, including the main prayer halls? Is their exclusion intrinsic to the religious practices? This is not just about entry, this is about belonging. This is about identity across religions. And it's not just that. Can courts define constitutional morality in matters of faith? Can one believer challenge another's practice through PILs? And most importantly, are essential religious practices beyond scrutiny? Because what the court decides here won't just shape temples and mosques. It will define the boundaries of belief, equality, and justice in India. I'm being joined at this point by Brinda Adige, who's a women's rights activist, as well as Rekha Agrawal, who's an advocate with the Supreme Court and social activist. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining me. Good to have you both. Good to see both of you after a while. Rekha Agrawal, let me straight come to you at this point. How significant is what we are witnessing? First, let's just straight start with the nature of this constitutional bench that has been set up. You have judges across religions. You have a Muslim, you have a Christian, you have Hindus. You have judges from south of India, you have judges from north of India. You have a woman judge in this. It's led by the CJI. This seems to be quite remarkable. I don't know of a last instance which saw this kind of an attempt, a very conscious attempt at inclusivity.
No, I think that this is a beautiful setting, a beautiful bench which has been constituted to hear this very, very sensitive case. Though, of course, if I may say so as a lawyer, it makes no difference at all regarding the religion and the gender of the judges who are on the particular bench. A judge is a judge. It doesn't matter at all, whether it is a man or a woman, whether it is a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian. So, having said that, I think that the CGI, in his wisdom, has constituted this bench, and this gives an, as I say, justice should not only be done, but justice should appear to be done. So I think that when there'll be thousands of people, across the country, who are probably having their eyes glued on the verdict which is finally going to come from this bench, and having as far as the human angle is concerned, when though of course, as I just said, it doesn't matter who the judges are, and under the Indian Constitution, all men and women are equal, and religion, there can be no discrimination on the ground of religion or of gender. So, but however, at the same time, when such a beautiful constitution gives, it tends to give the human, the human heart a kind of sense of comfort, that okay, like, like if I belong to I follow the Hindu way of life, or I follow Christianity, you feel that you've got a spokesperson over there on the bench who's probably going to take care of those sensitivities and nuances which are there in every particular religion.
Right. Brinda Adige, if I can get you in at this point, would you agree with Rekha Agarwal that it doesn't matter what background the judge comes from? And that's true, because law is law. It's not interpretative or dependent on any one person and one person's thought process, as it were. And yet, you have a very deliberate attempt from the court to ensure a sensitive issue like this that has triggered huge protests in the past. One of this, the Dawoodi Bohra case, is pending before the court for 39 years. Sensitive cases across religions, and I think the messaging is right there.
Technically, it must not matter, but you and I know in reality it does matter. And that is why women rights activists across the world and in India are again and again demanding that leadership positions, 50%, if not more, must and should be women. Now, that said, I don't completely agree with our panelist, because caste and gender, I'm not worried too much about the religion part of it, but caste and gender are two significant intersectionalities that we must address. And if we don't address that, we know that we are fighting battles which to a large extent is an eyewash. And saying that, okay, I have one woman over there who's going to be the next only CGI, or the only woman who's going to be the first CGI woman. So all of that is tokenism to a large extent. Let us put in. Yes, we need to ask ourselves, with so many other women judges, why would you have only one woman judge over there? Law is supposedly same. But at least when we are talking, and largely we are talking about women, how do men know everything about women? You need to have women to be able to talk about themselves and their lived realities. What do they face? What is discrimination? If I have not faced discrimination and I have not experienced it, am I able to actually extend that law only? And that's why when you spoke about constitutional morality, we want to ask this question. We cannot experience everything, but at least when we are talking today about equality, we are talking about being inclusive, we are talking about constitutional guarantees. Why can we not have at least 4 women judges over there? Why only 1?
Rekha Agarwal?
Are there no judges?
Rekha Agarwal, would you want to come in at this point? Because, it's one, it's about gender rights. 2, it's also going to define how constitutional guarantees are seen vis-a-vis religion. And Brinda Adige would say she's not very bothered about religion. But at the heart of this, it is religion. It's gender, but it's a lot to do with religion and how religion views gender and how gender views religion. Now, when you're talking about this, would you agree with what Brinda Adige brings to the table?
I would probably answer my question in the question in the manner that yes and no both. There is no point in just brushing things under the carpet. So the question of religion can also not be brushed under the carpet. We also have to accept that the religion is the core issue is religion. At the heart of this entire controversy is religion. And at the same time, some of the things which have been mentioned by Ms. Brinda, I do acknowledge that yes, there should be more inclusion. Inclusivity is very important. But let us not forget that at the cost of inclusion and at the cost of, ensuring that women are guaranteed their constitutional rights, as guaranteed under the Constitution of Article 14. But when we are talking about gender justice, and gender impartiality, there should be gender neutrality. At the same time, it should not be at the cost of the opposite sex also. So, having too much, as too much of a good thing. We cannot have too much of a good thing either. There must be a balance. So, I do not fully agree with the suggestion made by Brinda ji that why only have one woman judge. and why not have 4? So I think a balance is, I mean, let us not get carried away. There has to be a balance even amongst the constitution of the bench, which is going to hear the matter, because this affects the religion rights not only of women but also of men.
Brinda Adige, I know what are you going to come back with, but let me just come to the next point, because we'll just leave it at this. 2 women with 2 different important perspectives. Both of you have very important perspectives, and Brinda Adige, I completely get where you're coming from, as well as Rekha Agarwal. But I want to get to the next point before we just go hammer on tongs on just one point. Brinda Adige, the aspect really at the heart of this is lot to do. Do we have Brinda Adige with us?
All right. Yes, I'm here.
Okay. I thought, Brinda Adige, at the heart of this is, Sabarimala verdict, 2018, historic verdict. A verdict which said that not allowing women of menstruating age to not enter Sabarimala is unconstitutional. And yet, what followed was absolute anarchy, massive protests on the ground, a whole lot of opposition, and then 2019, there seems to be a complete reversal of sorts. They did not stop that order, but it was kind of taken away. That right was, in a way, not implemented. You did not have that police protection. No one really ventured to say, I want to go into Sabarimala. Now that's going to be decided. And while that came to the fore, there were a lot of other review petitions that were clubbed along with it, whether it be about Parsi women, Muslim women. How significant and hugely important is it? And is the fact, the heart of this, and I want to get to Rekha Agarwal on this, but before that, Brinda Adige, how much of this is going to redefine gender rights, religious practices in India?
It's the most significant. We are looking at not just one religion where women are excluded. We are looking at different religions. We're looking at places of worship. We're looking at patriarchal decisions that if you marry somebody else from another religion and not this religion, then you lose all other rights that I might give to you as my daughter. So we're looking at a very, very significant composition of people, and I will add now also religion. The earlier one I didn't want to, but yes, all of it where women are supposedly to be considered equal citizens.
Right.
That's what my constitution guarantees. And that's what everybody swears and promises by. Now, that said, this is what this group of people, a bench of judges, are going to be deciding on, because it is looking at women as sovereign citizens.
Right.
Not somebody belonging to a religion.
Right. Absolutely. It's about constitutional guarantees.
Something, but
right.
As sovereign citizens who have equal rights under the constitution, right, irrespective of a religion that they may follow or right, not follow, or be there or not be
there. Okay, I'm totally out of time. Rekha Agarwal, very quickly to you, the last question. I possibly will give you 30-40 seconds. Rekha Agarwal, one question to you, last question, and that is, at the end of the day, the Supreme Court is also going to look at a very important point, and that is, does anybody of a particular religion have the right to ask questions of somebody of another religion via PIL? That's very critical, because often one asks, who are you if you're not part of this religion?
Absolutely. I think this is a very, very important thing, that whenever a person files a PIL, he has to, satisfy to the Honorable Court about the credibility, right, whether this is a public interest litigation or ultimately it is a private interest. So it should not look like a fostered litigation or a
right,
proxy litigation. And I think that is also going to be decided by this court. And at the same time, just carrying on where Brindaji said, was talking
Less
about,
than 30 seconds,
I think that
no time
religion
left.
is extremely important to be decided. You cannot interfere in anybody's religious rights. That is guaranteed in the Constitution, because ultimately it also leads to your inheritance rights. If you're excommunicated because you've not followed a particular religion, or because you're married out of your caste and you are thrown out by the society, then your rights of inheritance also get carried away. So I think that if a PIL is being filed, I think it's very, very important. Everybody has got a right, to challenge it, even if you do not belong to that particular religion, because it is going to carry the sentiments of the entire public behind it.
Right. Brinda Adige, Rekha Agarwal, thank you so much for such a nuanced discourse. This is something we'll be returning back again and again. Constitutional guarantees, religious autonomy, constitutional morality, and so much more set to be redefined possibly in this verdict. Thank you so much for joining us.